If you think about the way it was always previously done before Senior Care Finder, it was high pressure sales funnel. It was lead gen, right? So it's a place for mom getting in the way of this consumer finding this provider because they're outranking them in every sense of the imagination. That consumer not knowing any better and clicking into that site, entering their information before they can see anything, and then their information being passed to everybody. So before, if I'm that consumer on that journey, or if my sister is, she's going to do that search. She's going to enter her information potentially. Now, I'll tell you, the consumer today is not going to enter that information. I think that's what we have going for us. They're not going to fill out that form just to get access. They're going to bounce, go back to that search, and when Senior Care Finder is just right below that other provider or that other aggregator, they're going to click into that and finally find what they're looking for, which is a consumer first, transparent, no lead capture, no commissions, in no high pressure sales. It's do your search under your own terms.
Welcome to The Move In, a senior living marketing podcast from Unlock Health, a full-service marketing partner for the aging services industry. Join us for candid conversations exploring the latest marketing strategies with the senior living community leaders and innovative solution partners who are moving our industry forward. Together, we'll build a community to build better communities. Why is the aggregator model so controversial in senior living, and can it be done differently? Hello, I'm Larry Williams, and welcome to the Move In Senior Living Marketing powered by Unlock Health. When you hear the word aggregator, what comes to mind? For many in our space, it's a commission-driven system, misaligned incentives, and a flood of low-intent leads. It often feels more transactional than relational, and that creates tension between providers, families, and the platforms trying to connect them. But what if there's a better way? What if an aggregator could actually empower the consumer and support the provider without commissions, pressure, or pay-per-move-in contracts? That's exactly the conversation we're having today with Heath Stukenholtz, the co-founder of Senior Care Finder. Heath and his team are flipping the script on how senior living is searched, compared, and ultimately chosen. We're diving into what it looks like when transparency and trust lead the way, and what that means for providers trying to stand out in today's evolving marketplace. Here are 3 things we discussed in this episode. Reimagining aggregators, how Senior Care Finder breaks from the typical commission model and puts the consumer first. Also, empowering today's buyer, why modern families want to research on their terms with no gatekeeping or pressure, and turning data into strategy, how understanding search behavior and consumer intent can sharpen your marketing game. So if you're ready to rethink how leads are generated and how trust is built in this industry, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. We are on the Move In Senior Living Marketing, and I have my friend Heath Stukenholtz with us. Heath is with Senior Care Finder. Heath, you and I met at Senior Housing News, the sales and marketing conference, about 2 years ago. And I felt like you and I quickly became friends. And in fact, I think we became friends in that first conversation. And even though it's just been 2 years, I feel like I've known you a lot longer than that. So I wanted to have you on this conversation, on this podcast, just so we can learn more about what you're doing and have a really good conversation about where aggregators stand. So welcome to the podcast, Heath.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, I would say the exact same thing, but who couldn't feel like they're your best friend after about a 5-minute conversation? You're that type of guy. And so I'll first say, like, just thanks for being open and starting these conversations within this industry. I've listened to almost all of your podcasts. I just listened to the one with Reed Davis from the One-on-One Sales Training Academy, who's also a personal friend of mine. And I just have a high level of regard and appreciation for what someone like he does in the industry. And then someone like you, Larry, I respect and value first and foremost our friendship, but you also add significant value to the industry too. So
Man,
happy to be here.
I appreciate that. That's really kind of you. I appreciate that. I look back at that first conversation you and I had. I think it was after one of my presentation is back, 2024, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I started chatting. We've just always stayed in touch, and it's been such a valuable friendship. And I reach out to you and ask you different questions about topics all around senior living. And so you've always been a great resource. But as you said with Reed, we have this community, and so powerful
Mhm.
that we can rely amongst each other for guidance, and you have that guidance. But like you and I just spoke about, there's also friendships there. We get to talk about family, talk about business, and all the other important things. So, man, I appreciate you you joining us today, and just to tell the audience, I reached out to Heath right after the Senior Living Executive Conference, also known as Argenum. So, do you have a preference, Argenum or Senior Living Executive Conference? I feel like people are in two different camps here.
I don't have a preference. I like them both.
Okay. Okay, good. So you and I spoke about this, and just you, knowing the aggregator conversation continues to be had, and that it's something that I feel like we're in a unique point within senior living marketing about how people feel about aggregators, and it was a hot topic at the conference in May. And I know what you're doing with Senior Care Finder, and just I jumped right into our friendship. Let me just say that Heath is the co-founder of Senior Care Finder. And so before I go too much further into the aggregators, Heath, I messed up. I didn't even properly introduce you. Please tell us what Senior Care Finder does.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of jumping right into it.
Yeah.
Senior Care Finder is really, I mean, we are an aggregator of sorts, and hopefully you and I can dive into what that means. We're an online directory of all senior living and care options. We are really the only nationwide consumer-focused, unbiased platform that allows someone to search, compare, do their due diligence, and make a confident decision in reaching out to the providers only of their choice. So we're not a pay per lead source. We are not a contract agent. We often get confused. It's why every LinkedIn post that I see from providers who I respect and value, when they talk about their distaste for aggregators, I take it personally, even though we're not really one. So hopefully we'll clarify that a little bit further on today's conversation. But Senior Care Finder is here really to just disrupt the way that it's always been done, allow consumers to find providers without anything in their way, and then ultimately make a confident decision after they've done their research.
Man, I appreciate that. Thank you for adding that. And again, my apologies of not properly introducing you. I saw my friend Heath there. I was like, hey, let's talk about our friendship. So thanks for taking a step back and really
Yeah.
explaining what Senior Care Finder does, because it is important to, start that conversation. Why I
Mhm.
asked you to join us today, just because going back to what I said before that introduction, we're in a unique time when it in regarding to where we stand with aggregators in the space, and there are some negative insights, negative input, but I think about what all you are doing and how you approach business and how in the service that you provide both providers and consumers. And so I just wanted you to help kind of set this, that message straight, and also really define what that value is at a different level. So
Mhm.
going back to the aggregator conversation, let's start here. We know what Senior Care Finder does. We understand about other aggregators. Can you define what you see as that when you think about that term aggregator?
Yeah, and before I kind of jump into that, Larry, I mean, have you ever had a provider on your podcast or that you visited with at any conference that has said, "I love aggregators. I love paying for leads. I love paying for move-ins." I mean, has that ever been a theme that you've picked up on from anybody
No,
in the industry?
no, there was one person I spoke to who was somewhat defending the aggregators, but the more they spoke about it, the more they kind of pulled back, and it seemed like it was more of a necessary evil.
Hmm.
And just being honest on that front. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good question to ask.
What I really hope to accomplish in our conversation, and hopefully this gets out there to the masses, because we work with, thousands of providers across the US, and it never fails, even those that we work with. A high quality lead will come to them through our platform, and their response sometimes will be, send me the invoice for that person they just moved in, or what do I owe you for that lead, or we can't accept this lead because they're already in our system, or something to that effect. And so I want to take our time, and I hope what we accomplish today is to better define who Senior Care Finder is first and foremost, but really to have a transparent conversation about what is an aggregator. We'll talk about some definitions of that if you want. We'll talk about some different industries maybe that also has aggregators. And maybe along that line, let's just kind of define what aggregator means so that we're all on the same page. Because I do believe part of the reason I take offense when someone posts, you know, the clickbait, if you will, on any of the social channels, like, hey, what do you think about pay per lead or aggregators in our industry or something like that? I always kind of go, oh, are they talking about us? Well, they're really not. I have to take that step back and say, what they're talking about really is not us. It's the A Place for Moms of the world, or caring.com. And we'll kind of touch on a little bit of that, and not to speak, negatively about anybody, but I do think it's important to really clearly define who are they and who are we.
I agree.
Definition of aggregator, I mean, you can Google it or use Chat GPT like I did. It's digital platforms that collect and organize data that allow people to source them and present them in a user-friendly way, in a centralized way, and allow people to take some level of action, right? And so that's, generally speaking, what an aggregator is. It's an aggregator of data. And so, think of other industries, and hopefully what we talk about, Larry, is we are the consumer. So like the consumer that is searching for senior living, that's us, probably our sisters, or our wives, or our aunts and uncles, or parents even.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about some consumer behaviors, but think about hotels.com or Kayak, if you ever use Kayak, to kind of pull every airline into, a concise way to say, like, what's the best flight to get from point A to point B. Zillow is a great example. A lot of people refer to Senior Care Finder sort of like Zillow, because we do list every provider. We don't gate content and require people to give us their contact information. So Zillow is a really good reflection of what we are trying to do in this industry. Then you have places like Indeed or ZipRecruiter on the employment side, and then you have A Place for Mom and caring.com that are also aggregators to a certain extent. So I'll pause there for a minute, and we can dive deeper into the difference between the aggregators. But what are your thoughts on kind of the aggregator in the senior living industry?
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you highlighting that and really explaining from a larger point of view outside of the senior living world, right? So when you and I first met, you said we are the Zillow of senior living, and boom, okay, I get it now. And because I have the Zillow app. I'm on Zillow, just looking at different options. We're not actively looking to move, but sometimes it's nice just to see what those options are. And I feel like it's the same thing with senior living. It's a great way to compare options, because what you want to do, what we want to provide the consumer base is a comparison, so they can see what works best for them. And what I appreciate with Senior Care Finders, there's not that pressure. It's not really driving those specific leads and holding those, but just really providing options so you can help, I'd say, drive higher intent leads. Is that a good way of saying it? I mean, do you see that as really that service that you provide is really connecting people with those higher intent leads, those who are a little closer to, those decision stages? Can't say it right. Those decision stages.
I would say yes and no. I mean,
Okay.
I think you just highlighted what a lot of consumers are doing on Senior Care Finder, which are researching, right? So they're in the early stages. So we have both, Larry. I mean, I think when you have a platform like ours that is easy to access, easy to use, all their options are there. They can narrow them down. They can create a saved list. We see consumers on this journey, and if you read any industry data, the timeline in which it takes a consumer from both lead to move in. I mean, I think, there's a lot of different industry insights out there. We capture our own too. It can sometimes be a year long. That process can be a year from that first point of entry into the kind of the sales funnel, if you will, in senior living, to a move in, can sometimes be almost a year. And on average, it's probably over 6 months. And so we capture that consumer just like you described, you using Zillow, Larry. That's a great example, because I'm on Zillow all day, every day in the evenings, just also looking to see what houses are for sale in the neighborhood. Now, consumers on Senior Care Finder, usually adult children influencers, right? Or the senior themselves. Those are the two primary audiences. Kind of a no-brainer there. But those people are in research mode. They're comparing their options. They're saying, hey, I drive by this senior living community, 5 times a week. However, I know that there's 75 more options within a 5-mile radius here.
Yeah.
What are they? How do I compare them? What do people say about them? what are their ratings and reviews? Can I look at some inside pictures? I don't really want to talk to a salesperson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we do capture that person, and we see that those consumers are coming back frequently. Every couple of weeks or every couple
Yeah.
of days, they're going to come back and use Senior Care Finder to do just research, right? We all know that people are choosing senior living too late. I mean, no one. We used to go and speak to, groups of people, 50 or 100 people at a church group or a senior group, and if you asked that group how many people want to live in a senior living community, not very many raise their hand. I mean, I think that that's a big challenge that we have in this industry, and I think
Yeah.
everyone acknowledges it. But you have to meet the consumer where they're at, and that's what Senior Care Finder does. It's really giving them an unbiased, fully comprehensive way to search, compare, and then only reach out when they choose to. Not when we capture their information and then sell it. We don't sell consumers information. So that's a big differentiator for us.
That's a huge differentiator, because I know that's a problem with some of the, like, whether it's a caring.com or a place for mom.
Hmm.
And so just thinking about that, is that the primary difference between, say, a senior care finder and those two other options I just mentioned?
Yes, on the consumer side, but and
Yeah.
then I would also say the big difference in our business model is, so the provider is our customer, right? So
Yeah.
just like a place for mom and caring.com, the provider is their customer. Those two places are either a pay per lead, so you're paying for every lead that you get, or you're going to pay for a move-in. And so, there's some thought behind, hey, if I'm only paying for a move-in, I don't care how many leads I get. Now, if you talk to Reed Davis or anybody or any sales and marketing director, you would say, why do I want 100 leads that I'm going to convert one of, and my salespeople are going to be chasing their tail? I spent a decade on the provider side, leading a sales and marketing team and leading operations for a regional senior living provider. And my team would get leads from a place for mom and
Yeah.
caring.com, and even local agents that generally do a better job of helping consumers, navigate the process. But we would pay a huge fee at the end of the day for that person who moves in. And, our CFO would always come to me and say, why are we paying these? Do you have a sales and marketing team? Why are we paying these lead aggregators to get us somebody who's in our backyard, who maybe used one of our other services, our skilled nursing facility for rehab or something like that? Why are we paying them, $6,000 to $10,000 for every move-in that we get? And so that's really where we started to think there's got to be a better way to do it, both on the consumer side and on the provider side. So long way around saying they're a pay per move-in or a pay per lead type of business model. We're a subscription based model. So just like somebody would, we used to do billboard ads, and we would do direct mail, and we would do newspaper and some other media, and we'd do Facebook, and we had a pretty decent SEO and SEM campaign strategy and PPC. And so just like that, you can stand out amongst your competition on Senior Care Finder. Not that we're going to, send you more leads, but we're going to expose you to more consumers who are searching in your market, that target audience, and still allow that consumer to reach out to you only when they feel like you're the right choice. And maybe we'll dive into kind of what we can control and what we can't control a little bit later. But so we're just a flat rate subscription model that allows that provider to, stand out. We provide a lot of detailed analytics and insights as it relates to consumers searching their market. We do some reputation management things too, and the ability to, once a consumer finds you, what do they think about you? So we'll kind of talk about, maybe we could dive into, what does your online reputation say about you, and how are you controlling the narrative
Yeah.
a little bit later.
No, that's all great. And I was just taking a ton of notes. There's so many different directions that we can go in this next
Yeah.
phase, and I'm going to try to hit all of them. One
Yep.
thing, as you were speaking, I just thought about this, which is the data and analytics and having those
Mm-hmm.
insights. The data and analytics that you're able to provide in terms of the searching and looking for ongoing senior living options, is that something you can provide these communities that will help them enhance their marketing strategies? Because I feel like it can not only help in terms of tell that story of that community, but understand those search habits could help the communities really understand, like, how can we position our services better?
Yeah. 100%. We try and engage with our partners on a regular basis to help inform them what's happening in any given market or territory. Sometimes they'll want to dive into a specific community. Sometimes we'll talk high level. We do an annual report that you can download off of seniorcarefinder.com also, that kind of highlights some consumer insights and data that we collect over time, real high level insights. So it depends who we're talking to, Larry. If we're talking to a community sales director, what they care about is often different than what a regional director of sales and marketing cares about, or a VP of sales and marketing cares about, or maybe the investor group cares about. So we really have different layers of people who really want different levels of insights as to what's going on in the industry. So we try and kind of capture that as needed on an as needed basis. But we have millions of consumers that use seniorcarefinder.com. And so when we can kind of grasp what are they doing, what are they caring about, what's their behavior, what are they clicking on, what aren't they clicking on, in what areas are they searching most frequently, is active adult or independent living a high area of search in any given market, or is it assisted living and memory care? And so we can dive really deep into those things, and our analytics team does a great job of figuring out, and what can we change to ensure that both consumers are finding Senior Care Finder during their search, because we are different, and we're going against Goliath in a lot of senses, and how much you can pay to outrank a lot of people, and so we don't mind being David, and we're we know how the end of that story works too. So maybe we've got something going as it relates to that. But yeah, I think go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny. I feel like you mentioned the David and the Goliath. Like that analogy, and I feel like very similar to David. You understand what you needed to accomplish and why you need to provide the service you provide. And we've never spoke about why you founded Senior Care Finder, but I'm sure it's because you saw a better way. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the difference between whether it's with a Senior Care Finder and a place for mom, or a caring.com, which is you're developing true connection. You're developing true connection for the, those who are looking for residents. You're developing connection for, the communities looking to, serve others in the community and within that region. It's not transactional. And I think that's what people want, is true connection, and they want to make sure they find that true connection. And something else that stood out to me is, we're in a day where people don't want to speak with salespeople. They want to look and take 85-90% of that journey by doing the research on their own before they connect. And I feel like that's so powerful in what with Senior Care Finder offers. So am I going in the right path of really specifically, why you founded Senior Care Finder? I feel like you saw a need and there was a better way, and you went right after it.
That's exactly right. I mean, if you think about the way it was always previously done before Senior Care Finder, it was high pressure sales funnel. It was lead gen, right? So it's a place for mom getting in the way of this consumer finding this provider, because they're outranking them in every sense of the imagination. That consumer not knowing any better and clicking into that site, entering their information before they can see anything, and then their information being passed to everybody. So before, if I'm that consumer on that journey, or if my sister is, she's going to do that search. She's going to enter her information potentially. Now, I'll tell you, the consumer today is not going to enter that information. I think that's what we have going for us. They're not going to fill out that form just to get access. They're going to bounce, go back to that search, and when Senior Care Finder is just right below that other provider or that other aggregator, they're going to click into that and finally find what they're looking for, which is a consumer first, transparent, no lead capture, no commissions, in no high pressure sales. It's do your search under your own terms. Now, I would say this. I mean, we have some areas of opportunity here where educating that next consumer who's going to be looking. I mean, what we know in senior living is once you get that move in, that person's probably not going to move again, right? So the customer changes every day. So we're attracting new customers every day. And while we have those people in research mode, we do everything we can to ensure that they know that we are the source that they can keep coming back to over and over again, and they can do their search. And when they're ready to reach out, they can reach out to any provider, whether they're a paying partner of ours or not. And they can find every provider on Senior Care Finder, whether they're a paying partner or not. And so that is the Zillow-like model. That's the model that gives, or it's open table. If you ever look for a restaurant, I'm probably not going to go to every restaurant's website.
I'm a big fan
right?
of open table.
I am too. And that's the difference between a directory or a neutral aggregator and a pay per lead source, or, a referral or lead aggregator. So
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting the directory aspect of it, because you're right. We're surrounded by aggregators. We don't even know it. Like, when you mention Zillow, I'm on Zillow all the time. Open table. That's how I typically, look for reservations, especially when we go to conferences. Let's see what's around. Let's see what's close by. It's taking that same mindset. And like you said, the consumer journey has changed for all of us in every facet of business, right? And so what worked in the past, it might not work now. And you continue to see the search landscape changing? I mean, we do as a marketing agency. The way people are searching continues to evolve. And I had a blog about that recently, just trying to take all of this together. But at the same time, it's going to continue to evolve. And are you seeing the same thing? And how has Senior Care Finder continue to evolve with the changing times?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if someone answers no, the search or behaviors of consumers isn't changing, they're probably missing the boat there. 100% it's changed, and whether we know it or not, it's already changed. Just in the way, I think when you look at search engines like Bing that were previously something you never focused on, now that they are powered by some AI. They are generating a lot more influence and traffic than they ever used to. And I think it's little things like that, Larry, that I think are really impactful. And here's what I would say about the changing landscape of both search and consumer behavior. It gives Senior Care Finder a tremendous opportunity to take the lead. Because search is different, and because that consumer that we're talking about, 34 to 64-year-old individual, adult child influencer, who's looking for mom or dad, likely, sometimes grandma and grandpa, that person is not going to stand for gated content. They're not going to stand for getting 5 to 7 phone calls from people they didn't intend on reaching out to. They're not going to answer their phone, frankly. And so they're going to be turned off by that, even if they stumble across that and go, well, I guess if I have to enter my information here, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. So they want independence. That consumer wants independence. They prefer research first, like you just described. Talk later behavior is what we call it. It's research first. I'll talk to you later. And they want to they will and quickly identify platforms they trust and those that they don't. So it's not enough anymore. And Larry, you've been in this business and industry a long time. 15 years ago, when I was on the operator or provider side, we thought we just have to continue to enhance our website. Right? We have to make sure our website has every piece of detail on everything that we do. We had 11 business lines. We did everything from Medicare certified home health to hospice to independent living, assisted, memory, SNF. I mean, we did it all. And do you know how confusing that was for a consumer that would land on our own website? And so it's taking that information. It's not good enough just to have a website anymore, right? If you want to go real deep in the things that we're leveraging, I mean, AI specifically, a lot of people are using AI and they don't even know they are, whether that's the AI summary that they're getting in Google or Bing or other ways that people have AI built into their platforms. We've been working on this for a very long time, knowing it's coming. We're trying to make sure it's right. I mean, I think we're trying to put I call it some boundaries between how much information and what it's giving you without directing it, because you do want it to operate efficiently and without any guiding. But we're really looking at, and if you want to talk about AEO and GEO, the answer engine stuff and the generative engine optimization stuff, we're focused that a lot of that comes down to content and what you're doing in the structure of your content and ensuring that we're showing up when someone is leveraging the AEO, GEO type of tools. But we know that the consumer today demands choice, right? They're not going to trust what they're finding on providers' websites, whether we want to convince ourselves that or not. We probably should have had a panel discussion here, Larry. I think that'd be a really interesting follow-up to have a provider, you as the marketing person, us as kind of that directory or, transparent aggregator, if you will, to have that dialogue around what does work and what doesn't. Because I think what doesn't work in this industry is attribution. There is a huge gap in attribution between a provider knowing what's working for them and knowing what's not. We find that it's a big challenge that we have with our partners, and in seeing that consumer from first point of contact or research all the way through their buying journey. And you hate to use that term, but that's really what they're on. They're on the buyer's journey. And there's a big trust curve in there. If you download our annual report, we'll talk about the trust curve a lot, which is like, where is this person at? I think the One-on-One Sales Academy does a really good job of helping sales leaders think about that. And how are you meeting that person where they're at? But that's what we're trying to do. Senior Care Finder is trying to meet the person when they land on our website. We're trying to give them relief. Finally, I don't have to enter contact information. I can just go look in my area. We have some AI tools that are rolling out this year on giving them the ability to kind of almost tell a little bit of a story, give what they're looking for. I'm looking for memory care in Nashville that is pet friendly and is secure, right? Like things like that can give us a really clear picture as to what providers meet that criteria. And instead of requiring the consumer to know how to use AI, we're going to help them kind of tee them up for the things that we want them to be asking so that we can give them appropriate results that meet what they're looking for.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And what you mentioned about just meeting them where they are. And you mentioned having like a panel discussion of different voices and, really to discuss what's working and what's not. I think what's working is really to get away from the transactional side of things and really provide value and to tell a story. And really we got to think about how we as consumers shop. And that's how we want to meet this audience where they are in this moment. And I appreciate what you're saying about really the directory side of this, which is, you can filter down to find the best options. And then you can, at that point, look at, say there's 3 that you're really trying to identify which one's the best fit for you. And I imagine on the community and the provider side that's a better fit also, just because you're not going through a lot of, let's say, unaligned fits. You're actually getting to the people who are a good fit to take those next steps. I'm curious about this. So you highlight a community on Senior Care Finder, and they want to connect with an actual community. I mean, you're not capturing data. You're not capturing the information. How do you make that connection from someone who's looking for care with those provide that care?
Yeah, so on our platform, we call them premium members. So on Senior Care Finder, a premium member can stand out from the competition. It's almost a little bit like SEO on our own platform. So I think Amazon's another good example of an aggregator that pulls in all the options. And I also find it a little bit challenging. And I know if there's a provider listening, they're going to say buying an air fryer on Amazon is a different decision than selecting a senior living community. I totally agree. So I'm that person. But as a consumer, what I'm wired to do, I'm looking who has the most reviews. What is their overall rating? And whether it's an air fryer or something else on an aggregator site like Amazon or Zillow or whatever, I'm looking at their options. Hotels.com is a great example where you can sort by star rating, you can sort by customer rating or consumer rating. We're actually advancing a lot into this, Larry, where saying which one is the best in, like if I'm looking for the top 5 assisted living communities in Nashville, that's a little subjective, right? So what we're really focused on is what does that person believe their criteria to be? Does it have to be pet friendly? Does it have to offer, meals and transportation? Do they have to have a 2-bedroom? And do they have to meet this pricing requirement? And if we can do that right, really, really helping filter down their options, then also layer in Google ratings and reviews. And I would love to dive into reputation management and kind of how that works as it relates to we can promote certain communities, and we call them, kind of sponsored postings, if you will. They're going to rotate. We don't only promote those who pay us. That's also very important. If you did a search in your area, you might see a premium member in spot number 1 or 2, but you're going to see a verified member that is not paying us right there in spot number 3 or 4 or 5. And so we're not just promoting those who pay for their subscription. It's really targeted advertising that they're doing on Senior Care Finder. And we know that consumers don't get to page 2 on anything, whether that's Google, Bing, Senior Care Finder, or anything else. So if you're not on page 1, you're not showing up. And then the next level of that is, how can we ensure that we're serving up what we believe that consumer to be looking for? Because that's where you get a high quality lead with high intent when they're ready to reach out. When you can marry those two together, which is, what providers are we looking for and which ones are they and why? And then let that consumer decide, do you want to reach out to them and get pricing and availability information? Then give them that opportunity. So back to directly to your question, a consumer can hit contact provider. They can select if they're looking for pricing or availability. They want to schedule a tour. That consumer can guide that process. So at that point in time, the consumer fills out their information, because obviously at that point in time, the provider needs to know who's asking for this information and how can I best communicate with them. One of the most important things that someone fills out on that form, how do you prefer to be contacted?
Oh, that's helpful.
It's amazing to me when someone says, I want to be contacted by text message, how many times we'll see or hear, hey, we've emailed them 3 times and we haven't heard back. And I think to myself, their preferred method is text message. So if you're not doing that, not meeting that person where they're at on this journey, you're probably missing the boat. And so some of the things we can control as Senior Care Finder is, if you have a community that could use more high quality leads, you can stand out from your competition, and it's likely that consumers are going to contact you more frequently. However, if you have a 3.8 Google star rating that we pull in automatically through a direct API with Google, that probably isn't going to benefit you if you're being compared next to one that's 4.8 in your own market. And so we've taken that a step further to say, how can we help these providers? Because we can't force a consumer to reach out to a 3.8 star rating community versus a 4.8, whether they're paying us or not. And so that's not going to be the model that we go with. How can we help influence and impact that community who's partnered with Senior Care Finder, who's a 3.8 star, to solicit more reviews? Or, maybe they have a few invalid, upset, disgruntled employees that left a couple star rating in there that is impacting their overall rating. So, we're really leaning in hard into reputation management and offering more advanced support and services to help providers solicit and respond, manage local listings. I mean, this better than anybody. I love your SEO Thursday tips that you do, Larry, talking about all things SEO. But if you're not updating your local listings, that My Google Business Profile, you're probably missing the boat. And we have a very unique platform that can help people do that. And so we're starting to kind of roll that out to our partners to help them be more efficient in that process too.
That's great. And, I think about, like you said, the way we shop, the way we review anything. I don't care if it's a product on Amazon, if it's a restaurant, if it's a hotel. We do look at the ratings. We want to hear what others have to say to have that confidence. And if it's that impactful with a frying pan, it's going to be even more impactful when you're looking for, that next step in that journey of looking for residents. So we need to do a better job at that. We need to really step up our game. One thing that I really appreciate, and I'm just continuing to take a lot of notes, is I think what groups need, what families need, whether if it's the senior living or senior living seeker or the family member, is really an unbiased view to really guide those next steps, to see what is the best course of action that they need to take. And I think that's really important as we think about our own process for searching whatever product that is or whatever service that is. It's online. We're going through and whether it's in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, we're doing research. And I think just having that information together is really important. And the more I listen to you, the more I realize that Senior Care Finder is more like Cupid. You're just a matchmaker. You're just bringing together the right fit so everybody wins. I think that's really important. And finally, what I'll say is how important it is for those in this process not to break trust with the consumer. You mentioned, if they want to be, they want to be reached out by text, don't email. Like take those little steps just to make sure you're listening, and that's a way to continue to build connection. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you highlighting all of that, and really appreciate you highlighting the reputation management side, which is more important than ever. I feel like that's only going to continue to get more important, and really grow in strength. Something else I just wanted to bring up, and I'd like to get your feedback on this. When I think about you and your organization, I feel like a big part of what you're doing is changing the narrative of senior living, and I feel like it's a big part of Senior Care Finder. Where do you see Senior Care Finder stands in that, in trying to really open the doors to, like you said, people typically choose senior living too late. They typically wish they took those steps earlier. Are you taking some action to really help connect with that consumer population to really open their eyes to what senior living, can be and what it really is?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, right? I mean, as a marketer yourself, I mean, you understand changing consumer behavior is one of the hardest things to do. So 100% we are trying to educate consumers, be a
Mhm.
resource to consumers, be the one-stop resource where they can come and find out like what questions do I ask on an assisted living tour, right? Giving them just some guides and insights as to what should I be thinking about. I've never done this before. I've been in one, but I don't really know what to expect. I think all of us together are going to have to attack that one. I don't think one group individually can change the narrative or the thought process or change the consumer's thoughts about that. I mean, here's what we know. I mean, we know that even consumers who could benefit from senior living oftentimes can't afford it. And so what are their options when they can't afford it? And so or the consumer that just wants to stay at home for as long as humanly possible, and they want to know what their options are, and they can afford it, but they're going to wait until the very last minute, and that family's probably not going to push them to do that. So I also think acknowledging that that's the world we live in, and figuring out a way to say, let's get them the information they need when they need it, offer that true unbiased researching ability, not have the providers, calling on them and calling on them and calling on them, but being gradually persistent. I mean, I think again, I hate going back to training of salespeople, but I used to be one in senior living, and I used to lead a team of them. I think us understanding where that person's at in the process, on the trust curve, and then meeting them where they're at is a very important component of this. Here's what I would say, Larry. I think what's interesting, and this goes back to like lead attribution and how do you truly evaluate the ROI of a platform like Senior Care Finder or a Facebook ad that you run or your SEO efforts. I mean, some of those have cost per click and cost per acquisition and cost per all the things. And, I think from an attribution standpoint, we see a lot of consumers who, and we hear from providers a lot because they think we're a pay-per-lead source or they think we're a pay-per-move-in source. And so these providers will respond. I mean, we get thousands of leads all the time. And so they'll respond to those leads that they're getting via email. We try and push them in directly into CRMs, which is another thing that helps us get that lead attribution in there. But I'll tell you, most of them are not being attributed correctly. There's a break in the system. And so when that consumer searching and we hear from a provider, oh, Mrs. Jones, she's been in our system for a year. She came to one of our events, or we sent her a mailer because she lives in a zip code of affluent people in and around our area. So she's already in our system. And we say, that's great. However, your salesperson must not have known that Mrs. Jones is actively seeking information about your
Yeah.
community because she had to come through Senior Care Finder to find you again. And so again, it's being that constant, there's a big loop as it relates to the flow of this consumer journey. And Senior Care Finder is a primary source of one. And while we're not capturing the information of all these consumers all day, every day, and providing them to the providers or pushing them into the CRM, whether they've chosen to reach out to them or not, there is this disconnect between we have all of these viewers finding our communities. However, we only have 2 sources of lead attribution in our CRM. So if you're not one of those, you don't get any credit for it. And we understand why a provider would not want to give a pay per move in or a pay per lead source any attribution, because they don't want to run a report and then at the end of the day go, well, that was a second point of attribution. That was not the primary source of attribution. So we're trying to work with CRM systems and other partners in the industry to kind of help correct that. And most importantly, give providers insights into this buyer's journey and consumer journey that they're on and how many touch points they're going to have with you. And that senior care finder is often one of them. And most of the time we're not getting credit because we're not, capturing the lead information before they become one. So.
And what the notes I took on that was, you were mentioning about the buyer's journey. And one thing I think we need to be aware of is there's multiple points of entry for that buyer's journey. Yeah. And so whether it's looking on Google and finding different options that way and connecting directly with the community, but before taking those next steps, anybody's going to go and do research, and whether it's reputation management or, like you said, with Mrs. Jones, they're going to look on Senior Care Finder and compare the options. Yep. And so I think that's something we need to do as marketing teams, is have that awareness of the different points. And in each community, each region is different. Some, it could be even radio. But typically there's going to be that proof of concept, which they're going to go back and compare to see what, like the ratings look like amongst different communities, and then look at the ones that, really best align. So I think it's really, we think about going forward, it's, again, we're giving the power to the consumer, letting them to, allowing them to do the research to find out what best fits their needs. And I think that's really important for us to keep in mind. And again, that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, just because understanding, really what Senior Care Finder offers and what that value you bring and how it's different than your typical, what we think of aggregator, and how you tell a different story. So Heath, thank you so much for just taking the time to chat with me today. I'm better off because of this conversation. I have every time I connect with you, I learn from you. So thank you so much. Any parting thoughts, any parting, just wisdom you want to share with the community?
Well, first of all, thank you, Larry, for taking the opportunity to bring me on, and as a friend and trusted colleague and person who I respect and value the relationship greatly. I just appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation. I don't know about wisdom, but I will, a couple parting shots, if you will. Here's what I would say. Senior Care Finders focus on the consumer, and it's the target audience that every senior living provider is trying to attract, right? And we're doing it for the right reasons, and we're doing it the right way, which is giving that consumer the ability to search and research and compare and share that with their family members, and then ultimately to make a confident decision. And then we are taking it a step further, which is, we previously, several years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, we couldn't influence or help support that community that was maybe struggling, and they had a lot of traffic, they had a lot of views, they had a lot of click-throughs, but they weren't getting conversions. We would kind of wash our hands and say it's not really something we can help with. And now we can help them improve their overall rating and reviews. And more importantly, I think this is an interesting thing that's probably for a follow-up discussion, Larry, but Senior Care Finder is not trying to create its own unique review. That would probably help us from an SEO standpoint if we had our own proprietary unique review. Everyone else has them, though. We try and leverage the most accurate reviews that are out there, and it can't be 100% accurate because anybody can leave a review, but we're pulling in reviews from every different segment, able to roll those up, give providers real insights in how they can influence and impact and improve. And so I think, we're kind of that full circle, full suite of options that can really help them now. And I'm really proud of that, because the provider is our customer, but we really focus on the consumer first. And we're going to continue to be a consumer first, unbiased, transparent, fully comprehensive directory of senior living and care options. And if people throw us in the aggregator bucket, maybe we should just take it as a compliment and accept it for what it is, as long as they understand that they're not going to pay us for a move-in, an exorbitant fee for that move-in, or pay for a lead that is, probably worth nothing to them. We're going to try and help them become more efficient and effective in their work and promote their services and also help consumers, educate consumers and inform consumers as to what their options are and how they can get in touch with providers of their choice. So thanks for
I
giving us an
appreciate that.
avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important avenue. I think about a good friend of mine, John Lynn. He
Mm,
leads a lot of health IT conversations.
yeah.
He's the organizer of Sway Health, and he mentioned the importance of curating content. And
Hmm.
and that's what that next phase is of when it comes to media, which is curating content.
Yep.
What I see you all doing and doing it very well is being a guide. Again,
Yep.
I think it's curating, whether it's reviews, curating options. I think you're taking that next step. So I know you said that, hey, look, maybe we should just lean into being an aggregator. I would say you're an aggregator 2.0. You're setting a new standard in it. So keep up the great work. I love connecting with your team. Speaking of events, what events will your team be at? So if anybody's at one of these events, they know to look for the Senior Care Finder team.
Yeah, what do we have coming up? We have Smash in the fall. That's a must attend event.
Yeah.
We love Senior Living 100. We love Argentum, the Senior Living Executive Conference. We're trying to get out and meet our providers. I mean, I think one of the things about COVID is it gave us the ability to work virtually, and we have people all across the U.S. But we're really trying to get out and meet our partners because we know that relationships matter, not only in provider partners that we have, but friends like you who are in the industry. I mean, I think the one thing I love about the senior living and care industry is that everybody is very collaborative. And when we come together, I think when we come together, we walk out with something impactful, whether it's, new business is always nice, but building relationships with somebody like you, Larry, or others in this industry that are doing good work and figuring out a way, like, how can we do it better together? I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's what we're thinking about. I appreciate the Aggregator 2.0 conversation. I think what that really means is how can we become in lockstep with CRM systems, in lockstep with marketing agencies who are also trying to drive high intent, high quality leads? Like, how can we be in synergy with them, working together with them, collaborating with them, and us leveraging each other's talents and gifts and resources to help these providers and ultimately to help the consumer that's on the journey. And so I think we have some real areas of opportunity there to continue doing that. And that's why we're going to be at conferences so we can build more relationships with provider partners and great people like you, Larry.
No, I appreciate that, Heath. And like you said, that synergy within senior living, I think there is that greater purpose. And that's why having conversations like this is so important. So we can understand where we all, like the fields we really play in and how do we merge these to,
Mhm.
really provide a better service to consumers.
Yep.
So, Heath, two last questions, which is you mentioned an annual report. Is that a report that you're providing to just really the general public for others to see and understand what's going on?
Yeah, it's really designed for providers. So if you go
Okay.
to seniorcarefinder.com, go to helpful resources, and you can find that. I could also
Okay.
share a link out to you if there's a good way of providing that.
I'll put
Um,
in the show notes. I want to make sure
okay.
we highlight that. So yeah, we'll add that to the show notes. And the other
Yep.
question is, where can people find you to learn more?
Yeah, seniorcarefinder.com. I mean, one of the beautiful things of not being called a word that doesn't exist is we are who we are, right? It's seniorcarefinder.com, the most comprehensive resource for a consumer to search, compare, and get in contact with senior living and care providers.
Man, this is great. Heath, thank you so much for the conversation. Again, I'm better off for it. And just thank you for all you do for the community.
Likewise, Larry. Thanks for the
All right.
time.
Thanks. That's a wrap on today's episode. Huge thanks to Heath Stukenholtz for joining us and for the work he and his team are doing to bring more transparency and trust into senior living search. All right, before we go, here are 3 notes I took during today's conversation. First, rethink your aggregator partnerships. Not all lead sources are created equal. Look for the platforms that align with your mission, support consumer autonomy, and don't just chase commissions. Second, meet the research-first buyer where they are. Today's consumer wants to explore quietly before talking to a salesperson. Make sure your presence online and on directories supports that journey with clear, helpful info. And third, invest in your online reputation. Ratings and reviews matter. Keep your listings fresh, respond to feedback, and treat your reputation as a living, breathing part of your marketing strategy. All right, thanks again for joining us. And until next time, let's go make some meaningful connections.